Jasmine, if you can hit record. Awesome. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for attending today's session. My name is Lorraine Ojo Oikware, and I, along with my colleagues Joe Lee and Jasmine Shoemaker, founded the UMBC Library's AI Symposium. On the heels of a successful AI Privacy and Ethics Symposium of April 2024, we're back with a new iteration. This fall's title is Exploring the Gadgets and Gizmo in Your AI Toolkit. This semester, our speakers will highlight various topics ranging from Google Gemini and its integration into UMBC's platform to the broader legal implications of using generative AI and much more. We were intentional with the selection of our speakers, remaining mindful to include librarians, teaching faculty, students from diverse backgrounds. Although this platform is not an endorsement of a specific AI tool or tools, we wish to create an open forum for attendees to learn and interact with this ever-evolving, impactful topic.
Oh, Rabbi Cuomo. Yeah. Where are you? Oh, yeah. I'm thinking maybe we can double up this if we had some pins or something, because
Our series would not be possible without the contributions from the following centers, departments, and organizations: the Hackerman Foundation, UMBC's Division of Information Technology, the Center for Social Science Scholarship, UMBC's Center for Artificial Intelligence, the Department of Information Systems, and the Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering. We welcome Dr. Marianne Hawken, our first speaker of the series. Marianne Hawken is the Director of Instructional Technology, focusing on expanding professional development and online learning. Marianne is an advocate for online learning through quality course design and effective practice, and a strategic partner for creating and promoting professional development that engages the adult learner. She enjoys faculty training and outreach, course development activities, and academic transformation efforts. Her team supports the learning management system, integrated digital tools, and licensed instructional technologies used to innovate teaching and learning and facilitate student success. The team also supports hybrid and online course design and professional development, including the award-winning Pivot program. With more than 26 years of experience in educational technology, Marianne holds a doctorate in management and 3 graduate degrees in distance education, instructional technology, and English. She is currently an instructor in the College of Teaching and Learning Science program at UMBC. Dr. Hawken's presentation today is entitled Exploring Google Gemini, AI Tools for Research, Teaching, and Learning. We welcome questions in the chat throughout the session. Feel free to private message questions to myself or one of my 2 colleagues. Questions will be asked at the end. We have extended by 15 minutes to accommodate more questions on this topic. And with that, I'll turn it over to our speaker.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Pull up my deck. Try that again. There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Marianne Hawken. I am here today to talk to you about Google Gemini. We do offer a couple of other tools at UMBC, but I want to talk to you about Google Gemini today and how it can transform your research and teaching practice here. I'm really excited to talk to you and spend the next hour with you diving into what I think is one of the more practical and accessible AI tools available to us here at UMBC. I know we have a number of faculty and staff joining today across different disciplines. So I encourage you to use the chat to introduce yourselves and let us know what department you're from and maybe what your experience is with using AI tools. Maybe you're new, you're skeptical, curious, seasons, whatever word you'd like to use today. So please, take 30 seconds to do that. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat today. Our wonderful librarians will do that. They'll be tracking the questions, and we'll have that dedicated time this afternoon. Today, we're going to be moving beyond the what is AI conversation and focus on this is the more of a how can this actually help me get my work done question. Because let's be honest, between grading, research, committee work, and trying to balance work and life, we need tools that help us save time and not create more work. So here's our roadmap for today's session. We're going to start with Gemini's core capabilities and what makes it different from other tools that you might have heard about. I'm going to briefly walk you through crafting effective prompts because the quality of what you get out of Gemini definitely depends on what you put in. We're going to explore Gemini's specialized features, specifically deep research for information gathering, its Canvas tool for content creation, and some of the newer features like audio overview and gems. We're going to briefly touch on Notebook LM, which is technically a separate tool, but integrates really well with Gemini for research workflows. And throughout all of this, we're going to discuss some practical considerations, ethics, limitations, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls that make AI more frustrating than helpful. Again, please use the chat as we go along and share any thoughts you might have or experiences along the way. So what is Gemini and why should you care about it specifically? First, the practical news, it's already included in our UMBC Google Workspace license. You're not adding another subscription or adding IT to approve a new software. You can just log in with your UMBC Google account and start using it. And since you're using your UMBC account, your data is protected and not used by Google for training. But what makes Gemini particularly powerful for academic work is its multimodality. Unlike other AI tools that only work with text, Gemini can process and understand images, documents, and audio files. You can upload a blurry image of some handwritten notes from a conference and ask Gemini to transcribe and organize them. It works really well. The advanced reasoning capability is where it gets really interesting for research. Gemini just doesn't regurgitate information. It can analyze complex relationships between ideas, identify patterns across multiple sources, and help you see connections you might have missed. Now, here's something crucial for those of us drowning in information. It's exceptionally good at summarization. I have put 50, 100-page reports in and gotten back some really cogent 2-page summaries that actually capture key arguments and not just the first few paragraphs. The content generation piece is what most people think of first. And yes, it can help draft text, create outlines, and write code. But I want you to think of it as less of a writing assistant and more of as a thinking partner. Here's some additional key insight that will make or break your experience with Gemini. Like with most AI tools, it's only as good as your prompt. So think of it as instructing a brilliant but very literal research assistant. If you say, help me with my class, you're going to get some very generic advice. If you say, I'm teaching introductory statistics to psychology majors who are terrified of math, help me design an activity that makes correlation coefficients feel less intimidating, you're going to get something more useful. So let's talk about some immediate and practical applications. These are things you could literally do this afternoon that would save you time next week. So syllabus development is a nice one. Instead of starting from scratch or copying last semester's version, try asking Gemini to draft learning outcomes for a new unit or suggest how to sequence topics in a more logical progression. Student assignment design is where I've seen some really good aha moments. Ask it to generate 3 different versions of the same assignment at different difficulty levels or suggest rubric criteria that align with your learning objectives. Discussion prompts are goldmine for Gemini. Give it your readings and ask for provocative questions that will actually get students talking, not just nodding politely. The translation piece is huge, taking complex disciplinary concepts and making them more accessible to undergraduate students. For example, you can take Gemini to rephrase a lecture on a complex topic for non-majors, and it's remarkably effective. And here's something that's really relevant to probably everyone joining us today is accessibility support. Gemini can generate alt text for images and create audio descriptions, and it will help make your content more inclusive without you becoming an accessibility expert overnight. So let's get into some of the mechanics of creating some good results from Gemini with your prompts. I'm going to show you 3 frameworks, and I encourage you to experiment with all of them to see what works best for your thinking style and discipline. So the first option is what might be called the kind of the classic structure. The role, context, task, and output format. It mirrors what we might naturally think about assignments or research questions. The second one, audience, background, task with format, works well for course design activities. And the third one is sort of a build your own, which is recommended once you get the hang of building prompts. Your discipline will have its own logic and its own ways of structuring knowledge. So don't be afraid to create templates that reflect how you naturally think about your field and how you're comfortable working with AI tools. The key principle to remember across these 3 approaches is to be specific, provide context, and tell Gemini what you want that output to look like. The more concrete you are, the more useful that approach will be. So let's take a look at these in action. So here's number 1. I'm going to walk you through this medical terminology example here because it shows that power of specificity. So instead of saying, help me teach medical terms, this prompt defines the role. You're teaching an introductory course. It provides the context. Students are struggling with decoding unfamiliar words. The task is specific, 3 complex terms broken down into parts. And the output is very clear. We want a table with specific columns. Now, if this doesn't work, what you produce in the output, you can reiterate and refine to get that output that you're looking for. So here's what we got. This is what Gemini produced. Again, the prompt is on the left. And this isn't generic information about medical terminology. It's very targeted content that's addressing the challenge provided in the prompt. The plain meaning in each example translates that technical language into terms that students can understand and remember. And for those of you not in medical fields, including myself, notice how this structure could work with any kind of discipline-specific terminology. Now, is this perfect? Maybe not. Is it 80% done in about 10 seconds? Absolutely. And you could revise this language or add your own voice. And Gemini's giving you a really solid starting point. So option number 2, this is our second template. Notice how the psychology example builds from the specific course level to the instructional goal to a concrete deliverable. So let's look at what the output is. So Gemini generated this entire activity. We have, again, the prompt at the top. A relatable TikTok scenario, a discussion question, and a comparison table. It's scaffolded, it's student-friendly, and it came from a carefully written prompt. And it's the kind of example that makes an abstract concept stick with students. It's current, it's relatable, and it illustrates confirmation bias in a way that might be more recognizable for students. In prompt number 3, these are a series of different examples. And again, we're going to make sure you get these slides that you can revise for your discipline and goal. You'll get to feel more comfortable about how to work with Gemini. But again, the key principle here is specific context and what that output looks like. The more concrete you are, the more useful the response will be. So if you're looking for ideas, these are some great plug and play prompts. We have summarize, brainstorm, scaffold, and clarify. So, we'll provide you with these so you can play with them later on. Here's a new one that's available. If you're signed into MyUMBC, you can go to, you can look at the OpenStax textbooks at openstax.org and prompt Gemini with @OpenStax with a question or a request, and it will refer to those open educational resources. These are open textbooks. And you can get, develop a lesson plan. You can ask it to explain concepts. But this is a brand new resource that's now available by connecting your Gemini core prompt with an open educational textbook. So let's explore and drill down into some more of these tools that Gemini offers. And there are quite a few. As we explore these tools, what I'd like you to do is make note of which tools might be useful for the work that you're currently doing or work that you might do in the future. Maybe it's a lecture you want to update, an assignment that didn't work quite well last semester, or a concept that students always struggle with. You can even chat with Gemini about ways of thinking through a prompt before you send it. We're going to start with deep research, which is Gemini's most powerful feature for comprehensive information gathering. So deep research works differently from regular Gemini chat. When you activate deep research, Gemini is not responding based on its training data. It is going to analyze your query and perform multiple web searches. It's going to cross-reference information across sources and then synthesize everything into a consolidated report. It's like having a research assistant who can scan many sources in minutes and give you a coherent summary with citations. Now, there are some limitations you need to know about. Deep research will prioritize publicly available content, which means it cannot check subscription journals or publications that our library provides because those are behind a firewall. But it's great for getting a broad overview of a field or identifying key debates. It is not a replacement for thorough, proper library research.
Just to be reminded about.
You are also limited to 10 deep research queries per month. That may sound restrictive, but in practice, it does encourage you to be strategic about your prompts, which actually may lead to better results. Now, here's where deep research really shines. It gives you some rapid topic understanding when you're moving into a new area. It might help you identify frameworks or methodologies across literature. I want to emphasize again that this is a starting point. It's not an end point. You always want to identify, verify information and consult original sources. But as a tool for getting your bearings, it's a good way to start off. So here's some examples. Say you're designing a new course or updating curriculum where literature evolves quickly. Maybe you're adding a unit on AI ethics to a philosophy course or incorporating recent climate science findings. Deep research can give you a comprehensive overview that would normally take hours of library searching. In another scenario, maybe you're comparing methodologies or theoretical frameworks. You can use deep research to analyze different approaches to qualitative research or compare those theoretical models. You'll get a synthesis that can inform lecture design or help you structure those comparative assignments. Finally, let's talk about creating foundational materials for students. Deep research could help you build background summaries, context pieces, or supplementary readings that bridge the gap between where your students are and where those primary sources assume they should be. Again, the key with deep research is it's a starting point. It helps you stay current. It might even support your research by identifying connections you may have missed. But, like with all good things with prompts, you want to give it a structure. The template here helps you build your prompt into key points, the role and topic, the scope, the constraints, and format. Again, the more information you give, the better Gemini can behave like that research assistant. So with your role and topic, you want to make sure that Gemini gives it some perspective and what kind of analysis you're looking for. For your scope and synthesis, you want to make sure you force deep research to go beyond surface level summaries, because by specifying distinct areas that must be covered, you're ensuring that comprehensive analysis rather than this kind of quick overview. And you decide how many and what type. Constraints and criteria add the rigor, and this is really important for you as that subject matter expert. You need to define this component to ensure that rigor. And then finally, when you specify the output format precisely, you're able to get something that you can work with. You can either start editing right away. Everything is cited so you can verify those sources. So how to use deep research? It's very straightforward. Just log into your MyABC account, access Gemini. Now, before you use this, you always want to make sure you have a really good prompt because, it is powerful, but with that great power, you do have that monthly limit. Seriously, don't waste your tokens on vague or throwaway prompts. If you're not sure about your prompt, untoggle deep research, use Gemini to build the prompt, and then turn deep research back on. It works best with comparison, synthesis, tracing complex relationships. You don't want to waste one of your monthly queries asking about a simple definition or something that a basic search could answer. So here's an example. This is a librarian-focused prompt. You could use the same structure. You just change the role, focus, and sources. So in this example, I wanted deep research to assume the role of a research librarian. I wanted to survey libraries at other R1 universities for information on scholarly versus primary sources and synthesize all of their lists of sources and strategies so that I could build a study guide. And you'll see here how it's showing me its thinking process in identifying the R1 institutions and then identifying that source. And here's a more pedagogical version. This one's a really complex prompt. I'm looking at for evidence-based active learning strategies in large asynchronous courses. I want an output that includes case studies, platform suggestions, assessment tips, and a comparison table. Because the goal here is to potentially build a workshop or syllabus section or a training module. Now, what I'm going to show you here is how deep research works. Now, this prompt took about 3 minutes to complete. This video is sped up for time. You can see the prompt as written. Deep research is confirming with me what I'm asking it to do and telling me how it will complete the task. It's showing me its thinking process. I can see the websites, the sources it's checking, and when it's done, the report that's generated with everything linked and cited. And I can read within the prompt window, or I could ask Gemini to then export it to a Google Doc for further editing. So again, it went from, I sped this up for time, but overall it took only about 3 minutes for this one to work. Occasionally deep research will choke, in which case you may have to restart it or adapt your prompt. But let's address the elephant in the room. What happens when students get access to this powerful research tool? And probably some of you are probably thinking, oh my gosh, great, now my students will never learn to do real research. And these concerns are legitimate. Students might use deep research to outsource their entire process. They might submit AI-generated reports, or they might become overly dependent on the tool instead of developing their own critical thinking skills. So perhaps the solution is not to ban them, it's to redesign how we teach and assess research skills. Perhaps we need to focus on the process, not just the product. Perhaps we need to require students to submit their deep research prompts and critically analyze the output. Ask them, what did the AI miss? What questions didn't it answer? Where would you look next? Perhaps we need to think about redesigning assessments to require additional context, personal reflection. Perhaps we need to think about how we use AI's limitations as teaching opportunities. Is there an opportunity? Because remember, Gemini can only search what's out there on the public web. It can't search library databases or access subscription journals. So if we ask the students, what's next? How do you then go into your library database and find those additional sources that deep research missed? Is the scaffolding approach an opportunity to have students think about AI as a starting point and not as a substitute for deep thinking? All right, that's a lot. Let's shift to a new tool. Let's go to Canvas. This is not the LMS. It's called Canvas tool, but it is for creation. Canvas is like Google Docs, meaning AI assistance. It's an interactive workspace where you can generate, edit, and refine content. So unlike the basic interface, you get a structured area. You can start with a prompt, maybe an essay outline, a course module or code, and then you can edit or expand or refine sections directly within the interface. And what's particularly useful is that you can request AI assistance on specific parts of your document by highlighting a piece and asking Gemini to make it more accessible or expand a bullet point into a full paragraph. Canvas really shines for me in course development and content creation. It provides that space to brainstorm, develop, and refine content. And this iterative nature of the tool means you can start with a rough idea and progressively refine it. I like to use it for course prep, drafting a course introduction, scaffolding module content, brainstorming workshop ideas. It helps me generate a messy draft, and then I shape it to match my voice. The HTML generation capability is particularly powerful. You can create interactive infographics, knowledge check quizzes, or visually engaging content that goes directly into your Blackboard course, which is particularly exciting for those of us looking for new ways of bringing fun content into your classes. So using the Canvas tool is very easy, and you can access it in different ways. You can just say create with your prompt. But this does occasionally have mixed results depending on the effectiveness of your prompt. Or once you do start to build content, you've initiated your core prompt, sometimes you'll see a little blue create button from that top right area of your output. And as you can see here in the upper right corner of the slide, from that drop-down menu, you're given a few selections of things you can create. My preferred way is to actually toggle the button that says Canvas within the prompt interface, and that actually lets me start to build content within the Gemini prompt window. And this one I think is particularly effective if I'm building on a series of prompts on a course development project, and Gemini has those conversations already built into memory. So here's an output of that Canvas prompt there. So I'm working on the medical terminology that I started with earlier in our presentation. If I pick the code button in the upper right portion of this output, I can copy that output directly into a Blackboard Ultra document using the HTML block. And this works well with infographics, checklists, mini quizzes. There are a few exceptions with this Canvas tool. If you build something that's really interactive, sometimes that dynamic content requires what's called an API key, which may need a fee. So I'm particularly careful when I use this tool to say I need it to be built in HTML and CSS for a Blackboard Ultra course, because this helps narrow down the scope of what I'm building. Here's another example. I've generated quiz questions on the same medical terminology question. If I want to change the colors, I just need to tell Gemini's Canvas tool to do that, and the code will update. Now, it's important to note that these quiz questions do not go into your gradebook. It's just for a formative, fun activity for students to do. But so if that's something that's really important to you, you'll want to use something like a Kindi or Blackboard's AI Course Design Assistant to generate a question bank. So here's what it looks like. Again, these are those Gemini created assets as they appear to students. They look pretty snazzy. They're very colorful. They're very bright. They're engaging. And then, it was very easy for me to create, and students can interact with them. They're providing that content, that a little bit of active learning opportunity for students. Let's take on a new tool that Gemini offers. It's called the Audio Overview. It's one of the newer features, and I think it has some interesting applications for course development. So Audio Overview gives you the potential for previewing content, flipping the classroom, or just giving students something to listen to during a commute. It generates a podcast-style conversation based on the document, slides, or deep research report you upload. The most straightforward application is to upload lecture slides or documents, and then asking Gemini to generate a conversational audio overview. It's like having two AI hosts discuss your content in a very accessible, engaging format, and they sound very naturalistic. I've experimented with uploading dense research articles, and then the audio overview can create these conversations about a narrow scope within those research, so that students can listen to a 5-minute overview up to a 50-minute overview. And this conversational format often makes very complex ideas more digestible than a traditional summary. So the process is straightforward. Again, just upload your documents or slides, click the audio overview suggestion, and within minutes you have this professionally produced discussion of your content. And again, it's helpful for supplementary materials that accommodate different learning preferences and busy student schedules. My newest favorite tool within Gemini are called gems. And this is a feature that lets you streamline regular workflow tasks through customized AI assistants. Gems are essentially these customized versions of Gemini that you can create for these recurring tasks. So think of them as a specialized AI assistant trained for a specific workflow in your teaching or research. Now you can share a gem with an individual user or the entire workspace. So I can create a gem with everyone at UMBC, or I can create a gem that I only share with the people in my team. So gems can be really powerful helpers. For example, you might create a syllabus planning gem that knows your department's requirements, your teaching philosophy, and your preferred assignment structure. And every time you need to develop a new course, you chat with that gem instead of starting from scratch with generic prompts. Or maybe you have a gem for translating complex jargon into undergraduate-friendly language. Gems can be used for accessibility. Upload an image and get a detailed, pedagogically appropriate description. I'm going to show you one that I created that I now can share with the university. Now for students, they can create gems for tutoring or active learning or test prep, or you can create those gems and share them with your courses for that same purpose. Now to create a gem, you'll go into Gemini and you'll open that menu and select the Explore Gems area and then click on that blue button that says New Gem. And from there, you're going to need to set up a persona, a task, optionally context, and then the format. And what you'll want to do is with the gem, you've got to be able to tell it so how it knows how to interact with you or others on a regular basis. And then you can refine the gem using the Gemini. It'll help you improve the prompt that it uses regularly, or you can provide it with additional files for knowledge. It lets you test the gem, and if you like what you get, you can save it and you're ready to go. So here's my accessible image creator gem. And what this does is it lets you upload an image and it will give you the image description. All you have to do is say hi or hello, and it'll tell you what to do next. You can scan the QR code, but as you can see, this is the interface for creating it. You give it a description, you give it the instructions. If I wanted to add more context with the knowledge, I could do that. When you access it as the end user, you're only going to see the right side of the page where you'll be prompted to upload your image. And it's going to give you a short description, a long description, and a caption to use. Try it out for me, let you know what you think, if it's accurate or not. I'm particularly interested in folks with complex images like math or science. But there's a really cool ways of you thinking through ways you could create repeatable tasks or tutors with your students, and then providing those links in your courses. Another function of Gemini is called guided learning. So let's explore how you can use this for tutoring and adaptive instruction for student support. Guided learning is Gemini's tutor mode. So it's more student-centered, but you can think about how you could provide students with guidance for using this tool. Students can upload course notes. They could get help walking through problems, generate quizzes, or receive coaching. The key difference is that it will ask questions back to the student. So it can break down complex problems, adjust explanations based on student responses. If the student demonstrates understanding, it'll move faster. And if they're struggling, it provides more scaffolding and different explanations. Again, it works well in a multimodal approach. It can provide diagrams and interactive elements and other visual aids to support different learning styles. So here's where guided learning can help transform how students engage with difficult material. So instead of just telling students to study harder, you can direct them to use AI tutoring that adapts to their needs. So the do your homework approach, students could get help with problems without direct answers. Guided learning would walk them through the first steps in reasoning processes, but require that they do the thinking. For exam prep, students could upload their notes, and guided learning would generate customized practice problems. Make thinking visible is a particularly interesting approach. Students would submit transcripts of their guided learning sessions as low-stake assignments, and you might get incredible insight into where they're struggling and what conceptions and misconceptions they're developing. So if you do use guided learning, it's important to give them some sample prompts so they know best how to use it. And these are some prompts that show students across disciplines how they might use it, whether it's debugging code or comparing terms. This tool can support practice, not just answers. These prompts are structured to promote active learning rather than passive information consumption. I really like the nursing role play prompt. I think it's particularly clever. It combines content knowledge with communication skills in a safe practice environment. So here's an example of a guided learning, again, with that medical terminology example. I want you to notice how the prompt is specific about the learning challenge, confusing similar sounding terms and requesting a particular instructional sequence, deconstruction, visual aids, and an application scenario. So in this example, the student responded to Gemini's first question with uncertainty. Now, I'm not sure I remember phage versus phase. And so Gemini responded with additional information to help. So this kind of targeted AI tutoring can provide that individualized support that's impossible, sometimes harder to offer to students in large classes. And students can get that immediate adaptive feedback, and you might get some better prepared students. All right, we're getting close to the finish line. Notebook LM, which is technically a separate tool, but I think it works well with Gemini workflows. Again, think of it as an AI research assistant, but it works only with the sources that you provide. So unlike general chatbots that draw from vast training data and the web at large, Notebook LM will only use your uploaded files. So PDFs, Google Docs, web links, YouTube transcripts and videos, audio files. Every answer it provides goes a direct citation back to your specific sources. And this is crucial for academic work because Notebook LM will tell you something and you can immediately verify it by checking the cited section of your uploaded document. It's not hallucinating, it's not mixing up sources, it's actually checking against your references. So it can generate study guides, FAQs, timelines, audio overviews. And it makes it a very powerful tool for research and for helping students. So for course preparation, you could upload your readings, your lecture notes, your syllabus materials to create a knowledge base. It can help you generate discussion questions, identify key themes. The assessment design, you might be able to generate quiz questions or discussion prompts directly from the specific content in your course. For productivity, try uploading past course evaluations or committee documents to identify trends and action items. You might also consider using it for writing support, such as a grant proposal or a teaching philosophy statement to help organize arguments. For students, now this is where it becomes particularly powerful. You could have a course tutor creating a notebook trained on all your course materials and share it with students as a 24/7 study aid. Again, since it's only drawing on your assigned readings and lectures, you know your students are engaging with course content and not random internet sources. If you'd like to learn about how Notebook LM can be used to support your students, check out the upcoming FTC event with Dr. Sarah Bass on October 14th, where she will share information about how she's using it in Chem 101. So how to access Notebook LM, again, it's pretty straightforward. Log in with your UMBC credentials and start uploading. You're limited to 50 sources per notebook. That's usually more than sufficient for most projects. As with all of the Google AI systems, long as you're logged in to the UMBC ecosystem, your content is not used for training. It's important to note that the way you share the notebook, you have to share it with specific users. So you'll need to put everyone's names in, or you can share it with a specific group. So it works a little differently than, say, a Google Doc, where you can share it with all of the people at UMBC. So it is a little bit of a workflow. Once the content is uploaded, you can chat with the AI about your sources, generate study materials, create those audio or video overviews. In this document here, this notebook example, I've used 3 documents produced by the US Copyright Office on AI and copyright law, specifically digital replicas and fair use, copyrightability of AI generated content, and generative AI training. And the notebook synthesizes these complex policy documents into accessible summaries, maintaining those source citations. Now, the audio summary features 2 hosts talking about the topic with an option for you to interrupt the stream and ask a question. Is that not cool? The notebook also produced a 7-minute overview video. Now, it does lack captions, so I could download it and put that into a source that would be better served for accessibility. But it's a snapshot summary that's incredibly useful to distill the information. So I think this is really cool use of the AI technology. I'm going to wrap things up pretty soon. This is an image generation. Just one last thing. This is a little cherry on top. So you can create custom visuals for lectures and presentations. You can modify images for professional use and generate visual aids. So one great example is, like, you have a headshot, right? I can take a picture of myself right now in this chat. I can upload it to Gemini and say, can you make a professional headshot for me? And it'll clean things up. It'll put me in nice clothes with a nice background, and I've got a headshot. I could also create some study aids. So this medical terminology construction, you can tell I'm really fond of this medical terminology class, shows how specific prompts can create, pedagogically useful images. And I want you to note that in this particular example, I asked the prompt to make sure that I used appropriate color contrast, because if you don't, you might get some things that are not, the color is not appropriate. And then I could go back and take this image and put it back into Gemini and say, write me that description for this image to make sure it is accessible. So, really cool ways that you can leverage Gemini for a wide range of tools. So some final thoughts, let's wrap things up for some critical considerations about responsible use. So first, transparency with students is essential. Let them know when and how you're using AI. Explain your rationale, what are the limits of using AI, whether it's for course design or research. I always like to emphasize this. You want to reinforce that you, not the AI, are ultimately responsible for their learning experience and assessment in particular. For privacy and security, it really does matter. Again, the good news is that UMBC's Google Workspace implementation keeps your data secure, and it's not used to train Google's AI systems. However, never use student data in external tools, ever. Just keep it safe. Algorithmic bias is real. AI can and will produce inaccurate information. It can miss perspective. It can reflect its biases in training data, and it can miss things wholesale. I have asked Gemini to read a 50-page document and give me a response per page, and it can miss half of the pages. So make sure you check it for accuracy, tone, relevance, and don't let AI, never let it replace your professional judgment. You are that subject matter expert, and that's really important. Critical evaluation should be your default mode. You want to treat AI as a starting point and not the end point. And always cross-reference with authoritative sources, especially for anything you might share with students or use in research. And then remember, AI is rapidly advancing. What I thought was good to go last week, when I checked on Monday, there were new features in Gemini that I didn't know about. So what works today might be different tomorrow or next semester. So continuous learning and adaptation aren't just good practice, they're necessary for responsible use. So at that point, I'll pause here today. I've got questions I would love to hear your thoughts on, whether in chat or a follow-up. How do you envision using these tools? What excites you about the possibilities? What concerns or challenges do you see? how can we best support our students? I'll throw these in chat if you're interested in talking about them or if you want to follow up, but otherwise I'll turn the mic back over to our wonderful moderators for any questions that we should chat about.
Thank you, Marianne, for your talk. It was awesome for you to kind of come and talk to us about kind of the features of Google Gemini. We do have a few questions for you, but again, just to reiterate, Marianne has added some questions to the chat to kind of stir up conversation. And of course, you can add to the chat any questions you may have about her presentation or about the journey towards Gemini and other tools. I guess the first question that I'll start off with was, what was the process for testing Gemini? Who tested? Was it UX designers, students, faculty? Who was involved?
Well, that's a good question. I think I would have to defer to our IT colleagues who may be here in chat. Do we have any of those folks here in chat who can could respond to the workflow on our Gemini implementation?
By all means, unmute yourself and share the wealth with everyone.
Go ahead, John.
Is the question that UMBC was somehow consulted on Google's workflow? Because Google doesn't do that with a lot of customers.
I'm inferring, I guess I would infer that, how was Gemini's kind of selected as something that that the university kind of started to implement or test, I guess.
Well, I think so. Why Google Gemini? I think, as Marianne pointed out, in many ways we are a Google campus. So as an enterprise license, it came with it. But I don't know that we have necessarily been consulted on the UI or the UX of Gemini, which I put in the chat as well. I gotta tell you, sometimes I'm scratching my head to try to understand how and why Google does what it does, but that's across the board with a lot of its products. And I also, in their defense, this AI field is still maturing, and trying to get that all sorted out is no mean feat.
Thank you. I have another question. Well, I have, it's two comments that seem to be in parallel that I think would be worth kind of commenting. One attendee said that they are very skeptical of using generative AI due to ethical and environmental concerns and a desire to not normalize outsourcing our ability to problem solve. As an archivist, I realize that my career field is rapidly shrinking, and if I don't get a hand on the ball, I would be pushed out. Another attendee said, I study but do not use AI. I am an AI skeptic. I fear we are ceding critical thinking to do things faster. Would you like to comment on that?
I respect those positions greatly. I understand that AIs can be scary, but I also see how rapidly it's evolving, and we need to be able to interact with it and know how to use it. The jobs of the future will involve AI. So I think the more that we are prepared to know how to use it minimally, I think the more we are able to be prepared to work with it. And that goes with our students too. So being able to help them navigate, what is responsible, what is ethical, how to construct it is, I think, an important part of the role that we have as educators and researchers. So it's tough for individuals to decide if and when to move into that space, but it's not going away. And so I think we have to, make the choice if and when you move in, but do so when you're ready. And there are ways to dip your toe in and just, go slowly.
Great. I have another question. Are there UMBC or USM policies or rules about how students are allowed to use AI? Faculty or staff also are included in this question.
I don't believe UMBC has a policy as of yet. I think there were some guidelines issued for Faculty Senate. Is that any of the faculty senators might be able to speak to that about guidelines? And I think the system might be working on a policy. But that might be more broad about AI adoption than, how faculty or staff use it.
Another question is how exactly can we integrate Gemini and Notebook LM?
So it depends on which tool you use. Some of them have share links that allow you to invite, create a view link for the user. Notebook LM, for example, will let you add your students' names, and then you can share the link in your class. Other options give you an embed code that you could then put into your Blackboard document. So it depends on what piece you want to use in your course. There are different components of Gemini that you can do that will reflect how you embed that and integrate it into your process. You also want to think about what's your workflow itself, your pedagogical teaching, your research, your just productivity workflow, how you want to think through that. Both the productivity and the technical workflows may vary with how you want to integrate that. If you want to, always open up a ticket, we can talk to you about, what those strategies are. I think Amy has her hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please, Amy.
Hi, Marianne. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I think that there's obviously a lot of useful opportunities if one wants to engage with the Gemini products. One of the things I was thinking about as you were walking through, or well, then what would be the downside, right? It's so great, right? So I have concerns about homogenization, right? So that if we are using tools like this, and maybe Gemini, Google's not the best example of this, but and we're asking AI to help us and assist us and in creating syllabi and creating all these learning documents. What if they all start to sound alike, right? I mean, one of the things about getting a university education is you get access and experiences with all different kinds of professors and classes, and not everything's the same. And that can be really useful, I think. And so I worry that we might end up creating things that all look alike. So, where's the place of novelty? Where's the place of personality in this? And as I said, I'm a skeptic. So those are some of the concerns I have. If we are seeding our own personal knowledge and then creating things that rely on the same documents or the same prompts or the same things, that we may end up with less quality, frankly.
So I think there are a couple things to think about. The first is you are the subject matter expert. So your content knowledge and experience are really important in framing how that prompt is entered into into Gemini, to Amplify, to Copilot, to whatever tool you choose to use. And so what the output you get, if it's not what you want, you can refine it. It also helps to establish the context, the voice, the tone that you want coming out of that prompt. So, I've given you a lot of very generic prompts. So you can go in and with that prompt say, write it in a friendly tone, write it in an authoritative tone, write it in a professional tone. You can modify that output so it's creating it in the voice. You could even give it your lecture materials and say, try to write it in my voice, by using that. Up to you. But your voice is second. When you get the output, it's yours then to modify, because it's important at that point, because you don't accept what it writes and just put it out there. You have to then take it and say, how do I make this mine? Is it right? Is it good to go? Am I just going to stick it out there? Or what do I do to customize this and make it what it is I need to do? Is it 80% there, 40% there, whatever level it is? Now do I take it and make this what it is I wanted to use with students? So I think to answer your question about the homogenization is we don't want to just take what we get and just stick it out there. We have to then edit, customize it so that it does represent our experience and our voice moving forward. I think where the AI tools can be helpful to us is when we do expect some level of standardization for structure. You may expect the syllabus to have some level of structure because that's what the institution or accreditation requires. Then yeah, AI can be really helpful there. But when you get to like a course introduction, everyone's course introduction is going to be very unique for your voice. So when I get a course introduction from AI, it's like, well, that's a good starting point, but it's not lining up with how I would talk to a student. So you've hit the bullet points. Now let me make it my voice. I hope that helps.
If I could just respond really quickly, I really
Please.
appreciate your careful attention to how this is a tool and we need to, always be checking it and refining and things. My concern is that students especially may not get that message, right? So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you keep saying that. It's a starting point, not an ending point, right? Still have a lot of concerns, but I really appreciate your discussion.
Thank you, Amy. Happy to continue conversations.
I think we do have time for another question. What are folks considering about the environmental impacts? I worry that the trade-off, it's about my time, energy versus the water, natural resources I just burned to do something I could have done on my own. And I think a follow-up would be maybe how does this also align with our sustainability goals?
That's a good question. I want to say Anthology, and maybe Josh could help me here if he's still on, came out with a recent report on environmental impact of their AI tools. It's a fair question. I am not as well versed in this area, so I don't have a good answer for you on this. And I'm not sure that as an institution we've dug into that itself. But yeah, Josh is going to look up the white paper on that. So at least you can see what one of our vendors has done in terms of that question about what the environmental impact is on their tool, their AI tool. So at least you can see what one of our vendors has considered on that in that area. Does anyone else want to come on mic or ask a question? Yes, we will make sure. I know one of the questions earlier was make sure you get the slides. I definitely want to make sure you get the slides because there are a lot of sample prompts within the deck you got, but at the end, there's a few other sample prompts.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you again for your presentation. We had one question, I believe it was concerning copyright. The participant asked, are textbook manufacturers okay with their books being uploaded to LLMs? Some content producers, like the New York Times, have filed lawsuits re compensation for AI use of their copyrighted work. If you wouldn't mind just speaking briefly, I know we are very close to time, that would be much appreciated.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a lawyer. So don't take what I say with any kind of, legal expertise, especially with this being posted to YouTube. Um, I would say that you are posting your materials to a firewall protected instance of Gemini. Depending on the amount of materials, it could fall under fair use. So I would be okay with you posting some materials, but maybe not the entire textbook. I think a lot depends on what's the intent of the fair use. That it is a difficult area. I know that some companies that used material for training purposes cited fair use, and they're the ones being sued. We're using it for educational purposes, but there's that one little criteria that says the amount used. So that's the sticking point, I think, for putting materials into the AI. That said, we're not using it for training. It's not escaping our ecosystem. It is restricted to our bucket of students. I think it's a gray area that's hard to work around. So I'm not an expert. I probably need to defer to general counsel on that. But I would say, just, use smaller pieces of content as you're, navigating that particular area of using AI for, querying your content, building resources for students.
Just doing a last search for any questions, comments, anything that anyone would like to add. We are almost at time. I'm not seeing anything. So I think, I guess that's going to be it. But of course, attendees, you are welcome to reach out to myself or my colleagues, Joe or Jasmine. Reach out to Marianne, of course. And I just want to thank you so much for attending and for your presentation, Marianne. To continue to support future symposiums, please reach out to us to offer any recommendations, monetary, or any other contributions for future speakers or topics. We would also greatly value your feedback. So please be sure to fill out our feedback form, which will be linked in the chat. And we'll also go out with our recording of this session. We do hope to see you back here again next Wednesday, October 8th, for Brianna Hughes's presentation entitled Assembling an AI Toolbox, Access-Oriented Approaches to Scholarship Instruction. Thanks again, Marianne. It was a pleasure and a great presentation.
Glad to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go
Thank
ahead
you.
and stop the recording.